So the thing about shower thoughts is they don't necessarily have to be in the shower to happen. So it was 2 a.m. I was soaking in a hot bath, I was ready to wind down, get to bed, and I was reading manga, as I often do. And then I was struck with inspiration of a shower thought. Kimihito's house is full of Greeks. What did my brain just do to me? In 2012, a manga author by the pen name of Oyakado began a series called Everyday Life with Monster Girls, where a lone bachelor named Kurusu Kimihito, written with the kanji for next house sitter and public character, comes into the accidental custody of a demi-human girl named Mia from the Lamia race, by way of either government negligence or just straight government incompetence. And over time, more demi-human girls would join the home as permanent residents and potential romantic partners. This series is an ecchi rom-com, and there's an absolute abundance of fan service to oogle at. Tits everywhere. And almost all of these demi-humans are foreigners in some way, except for the Yuki Onna that runs a hot spring inn. The only monster girl of the MC's house that is not explicitly from some foreign myth to Japan would be Sue the Slime Girl, and even then there are some characters like kobolds and orcs that are strictly imported from first edition Dungeons & Dragons. If you read manga, you've probably noticed this. Kobolds look like canids, they look like dogs. The reason for this is when the first edition monster manual was translated into Japanese, kobolds were described as having a dog-like snout, which led the Japanese to believe they were dogs. Same thing happened to the orcs, who were described to have pig-like snouts, which is why the Japanese depict orcs usually as bipedal pigs. But at least 4, maybe 5 out of 7 girls in Kimihito's house are from Greece. First of the girls, Mia of the Lamia race, originating from Greek mythology as child-eating monsters and later night-haunting spirits. The myth goes that they are actually the children of a queen of Libya whose name was Lamia. Zeus looked down from the heavens and saw Lamia, and because he's a sex pest, he was like, yeah, I'd like to tap that. So he went down and he made babies with Lamia. So Hera, being Zeus's actual wife, did the completely rational move of kidnapping or killing all of Lamia's children. Lamia was said to have gone insane from grief and would steal away children to devour, which would eventually change her shape to become more monstrous. Further proof that the Lamia are in fact Greek comes in chapter 60. The group of main characters go to visit Mia's hometown, and wouldn't you know it, it looks exactly like Santorini Island in Greece. It's also inhabited by at least 2 additional Greek races of snake women. The Echidna from Greek legend, whose name translates to Viper Woman, and the Medusae, who are literally just gorgons. There's one more subgroup of Lamia that don't appear in the manga, and that is the Melusine. Folklore says that they are female spirits that inhabit the water of holy wells and rivers. While their upper body is that of a woman, their lower body can either be that of a fish or a serpent, and they are often depicted with having wings. But the Melusine legends are largely known from the regions of Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and the parts of France and Germany geographically close by called the Lowlands. So Lamia, mostly Greek. Mia, definitely Greek. Second to join is Poppy the Harpy. Harpies are Greek, plain and simple. Famously from the story of Phineas of Thrace, who was given the gift of prophecy by Zeus, but angered the god by using his gift of prophecy to give away the god's secret plan. So Zeus blinded him and put him on an island with a feast, but anytime he would try to eat the food, the harpies would swoop down and steal it out of his hands. This scene was part of Jason and the Argonauts. As far as other harpy subspecies go, Oyakado just puts variations of birds to it. The flightless harpies that can run really fast, the poultry harpies that lay lots of eggs, predatory harpies based off raptors and owls. There is a subspecies of harpy based on the Garuda that comes from Hindu myth, but they don't appear in the manga. So Poppy, most likely Greek. Third to join the house is Centaurea Chianus, centaur, blatantly Greek. Famously from the union between Ision, the king of Lapiths, and Nephel, the cloud nymph. As the myth goes, Nephele made herself look like Hera to trick Ixion into revealing his lust for Zeus's wife. Born from them was the first centaur, Centaurus. Another myth says that it was actually Centaurus who made the first centaurs because he had a specific penchant for the backside of Magnesian mares, bronies, every goddamn time. And yet still there is another conflicting account that says Centaurus was actually the son of Apollo and the nymph Stilbe. And there are many, many named centaurs, most of them attending weddings or dying in battle. I don't know who Pirithous was, but apparently he was so important he had a literal herd of centaur at his wedding. But it wasn't just Greece that has myths of horsemen. India has tales of the Kinnaras, who are said to live in the Himalayan mountains. And Russia has the tale of Polkan, a half-man, half-equine creature that went from enemy to ally of Bova Korolevich. And as with the harpies, Oyakado just makes a few variations to their subspecies. Racing centaurs that are lightweight and fast, dairy centaurs for horse milk, minotaur milk farm notwithstanding, because that's also a thing, and heavyweight centaurs such as warhorses or Clydesdales. The nightmare centaur that feeds on bad dreams, a unicorn centaur selling horn shavings to fund her crippling idol addiction, and at least one Pegasus centaur that seems weirdly close to Poppy. So Centaurea, Greek. Also, a female centaur is called a centauride. I didn't know that. Fourth to come along is the wildcard Sue, the slime girl. Where did this even come from? Well, there is an autistically detailed Reddit post about the history of slime creatures in fictional media, and none of it has a basis in mythology. But for the kind of slime girl that Sue is, the modern humanoid form gelatinous creature, the furthest I could find back would be either Monster Girl Quest, released in 2011, or Monster Girl Encyclopedia Volume 1, yes, Volume 1, in 2010. And even then, it's fairly clear that there was some level of inspiration going into that based off of Dragon Quest, with the most basic and numerous version of the slime girl being blue in color. So Sue really is a modern invention. Fifth is Meroun Lorelei, the mermaid. This is the one that might not actually be Greek. I mean, canonically, she's Atlantean. But the myth of the mermaid can stem from multiple places. The Japanese have their own myth of a mermaid called a ningyo, but those things don't look anything like the kind of mermaids we've become accustomed to seeing in the West. No, the Western fish-style mermaids are kind of a derivative from the Greek myth of the sirens. Those sirens themselves were originally bird-like. And from what I could research, it looked like the transformation from siren to mermaid happened during the Christian era of the Mediterranean. And once again, Oyakado takes this idea and gives it some biodiversity. Not just the classic fish-tailed mermaids, there are eel mermaids, freshwater mermaids, shark and lamprey mermaids. But the reason why Meroun might not actually be Greek has to do with her family name, Lorelei. The name Lorelei itself is a fictional German siren created by Clemens Brentano in 1801. And even though he calls her a siren, she is depicted to be like a modern-style mermaid with a fishtail. So there is a non-zero chance that Meroun is Greek, though she could also potentially be Italian or German in origin. Sixth to join the house is Rachnara. And with a cursory knowledge, you could consider, hey, that's definitely Japanese, the Joroguma, right? The entangling bride. Well, no, those are orb weaver spiders, and they take on a more human form. Or if you've played Dungeons & Dragons long enough, maybe you're thinking of the Drider, a drow fused with a spider. But that's not it either. Let me tell you a story. There once was a young girl. Her face was pale and fair, but her hair was long and dark. All she cared to do from noon till night was sit in the shade and weave, and her name was Arachne. She wove many fine and fair things on her loom with flax and wool and silk, and when any would come to see what she had made, they would always say the cloth was so thin and soft and bright, and people came from all parts of the world to see it, and they said the cloth was so rare it could not be made with materials, but that it was rays of sunlight and threads of gold. Then came an afternoon when she sat in the shade and talked to passers-by as she often did. when one asked her, "Who taught you to spin and weave so well?" "No one taught me," Arachne replied. "I learned how to do it as I sat in the sun and the shade, but no one showed me." "But it may be Athena," the passerby said, "goddess of wisdom, who taught you and you didn't even know it." "Athena? Bah," Arachne replied. "How could she teach me? Can she spin such skeins of yarn as these? Can she weave goods like mine? I should like to see her try. I can likely teach her a thing or two." The woman was not happy with this response. "Arachne," she said, "I am Athena, the goddess of craft and wisdom, and I have heard you boast. You are certain you still mean to say that you can spin and weave as well as me?" Then and there, Athena and Arachne agreed on a contest, one which Zeus would be their judge, and the loser would never again weave. When Zeus saw Arachne's weaving, even he said with a nod, "No wonder the maiden boasts of such skill." But when Athena began to weave, she outdid Arachne to such a degree that everyone who was watching had forgotten about Arachne's weaving. The mortal had lost the competition, and was never again to touch a loom or spindle. But Athena took pity on Arachne and said to her, "I would free you from your bargain if I could, but that is a thing which no one can do. And yet, since you will never be happy unless you spin and weave, I will give you a new form so that you can carry on your work with neither a spindle nor loom." And so she was turned into a spider. The story of Arachne was one of the works of the Roman poet Ovid in his book Metamorphosis, which contained a huge number of myths and legends to come out from that area. And Arachne herself, post-spider transformation, is often depicted in the same manner that Oyakado depicts Arachne species. Humanoid woman upper half, spider abdomen and thorax. And once again some biodiversity with small jumping spider breeds, long-legged breeds, large hairy tarantula-like breeds, and Jorogumo. Seventh and final monster girl of the MC's home is Lala the Dullahan. She is very unique. The Dullahan being from Celtic myth, one of the unseelie fae, mischievous or outright malevolent fae folk, most famously the Headless Horseman. But to make it clear, Lala isn't classified as a subspecies of fairy, and despite being depicted as something of a grim reaper, she's not a subspecies of either undead or godlike, which kind of just puts her in this unique category. And that's the Kurusu household. At least 4, maybe 5 of the 7 monster girls are Greek. I enjoy the series way too much. I don't even care if it makes me sound like a gooner. I really want more seasons of this anime. Lurchi made 14 episodes back in 2015, and it's basically sat unnoticed since then. The manga is still publishing, albeit very slowly, but it is still publishing. More is happening, and it's so much fun. Why can't we have more of that? Fun and monster girl tits everywhere. The world needs more of that.